What's up, guys? Welcome to Whisky. My name's Jeff. Now, this is a channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions on a specific whiskey, and if you stick around to the end, I'll be giving it a score as well. If that sounds interesting, hit subscribe down below. And with that out of the way, why don't we jump into a review? Today, we're looking at the Glenfiddich 18-year-old. Stick around. So we're heading over to Speyside today. We have an 18-year-old Glenfiddich with us. Glenfiddich is a really big brand in the Scotch whiskey industry. In fact, it's one of the biggest. And I think their best-selling whiskey is going to be their 12-year-old. Now, the 12-year-old, you'll find it at basically any bar or liquor shop you ever go to. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the 12-year-old is one of the best-selling single malt scotches in the world. But Glenfiddich is one of those distilleries that I think is largely ignored by the whiskey community. It's an easy-sipping, people-pleasing whiskey, and of course, that's what it's designed to be. I think it gets a certain level of respect from whiskey drinkers, but their core range and their new product releases never get much hype or fanfare. But honestly, that's to be expected. Now, if you're watching this channel, people like you and me are probably about, let's say 1%, maybe less than 1% of their target market. So as such, they're probably not too concerned with impressing us. They're probably much more preoccupied with making a smooth, accessible, mass-appealing whiskey. But honestly, smooth and mass appealing doesn't need to be a death sentence. Personally, I enjoy a lot of different kinds of whiskey, and I really couldn't care less if my whiskey comes from like a big corporate distillery or a small craft distillery. Tell you what, if the whiskey tastes good, that's good enough for me. That being said, I've never been a huge fan of Glenfiddich. I think they make decent enough whiskey, but I've never had anything from them that really blew me away. Not that I would expect them to. I've always seen them as kind of like a decent, middle of the road kind of whiskey. I think they have a nice house style. For me, I always get like an apple note from them, and I mean, I like apples. Not only that, I also like a good age statement. So for our 18-year-old here, this was matured in a combination of bourbon barrels and Oloroso sherry barrels. We have no idea about the proportions. Usually with big brand stuff like this, we don't get too much info from them. So yeah, with that said, why don't we hop into our review of this one, see what it's all about, and in the meantime, if you can kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. So as you've probably guessed, we're not going to do too well here. This one comes in at 40%. It is chill filtered and it is colored. Now most Glenfiddichs are, and on one hand, that is kind of to be expected from these big brands, but on the other hand, that sucks. So no point in showing you the color here. It's almost finished and it's not a natural color anyway. For presentation, I'm not a fan of these Glenfiddich bottles. I never have been. Some people like them. I mean, the triangular bottle shape definitely is a look. It's unique, but it's not to my taste. It's not to my liking. It's somehow very unique and simultaneously very boring to look at the same time. My presentation score here is going to be 1.5 out of 5. Not great. And you know, it's funny, they recently redesigned the labels for the 12 and the 15-year-old, and I think the modern versions of the 12 and 15-year-old labels look way better than those older ones. Unfortunately, they stuck with a more dated look for their 18-year-old here. What else? We don't have much info, but that's to be expected. It says small batch reserve down here. Obviously nothing small batch about it. The whole bottle look is just kind of meh. I actually tend to hide it behind some of my other bottles. Let's try our nose. So we get the Glenfiddich house style right off the bat. We get those apples. We get just kind of like orchard fruits in general here. Some oak, some gentle baking spices, caramel, a little touch of maple sugar in there. Malt, red wine tannins. You get some sultanas and a little bit of orange zest. Now this is very fresh and friendly. I quite like it. Let's try our palate. Okay, very light arrival. Yeah, kind of watery in fact, but we do have some good flavors here. We got butterscotch, we got fruit pudding in here, apple pie, some chocolate milk, there's some peaches, there's strawberry rhubarb pie, and here's a new one, blossoming roses. Never picked that up before. Let's try our finish. All right, so starting on strawberries, berries, some milk chocolate, some cream, gentle herbs in here. We have a touch of oak, we have some vanilla, and we have some sweet red apples. Now this is pretty light in the body, pretty short finish. Overall, I'd say the finish is really where that low ABV catches up with it. So this is an easy whiskey, it's mass appealing, and does that have to be a bad thing? Absolutely not. It's also a whiskey that comes in at 40%. Now, does that have to be a bad thing? Yes. Yes, it does. This is very light in the body. Our finish is kind of short and disappointing. This is one of those classic cases of this would be so much better at a higher ABV. More intensity here would definitely elevate the whiskey. Of course, it's still no masterpiece, but it would be much better. And you know, I don't think people buy Glenfiddich hoping for an adventure. This is not an adventure whiskey. It is balanced. It's not very complex, but it has some really nice flavors. And to its credit, I guess with that low ABV, a lot of people, a lot of casual sippers would consider it smooth. So yeah, this whiskey is very by the numbers, but I do think that the market does need whiskeys like this. You know, there's a lot of whiskeys like this that set people off on their whiskey journeys, if you will. I would feel totally fine offering this to a beginner, someone who's never had a Scotch before, who wants to kind of get an introduction to it. You have a lot of those classic, typical Scotch flavors in here. You know, obviously I'm not going to start them off with something like a Lafroig or a Springbank, although I'm sure a lot of you out there would, you absolute monsters. But no, this is a great starting point. In a sense, I think this is a good ambassador for Scotch whiskey. You get a lot of those classic flavors, you get some nice balance here, and there's nothing too challenging. Obviously, as time goes on, you're going to start seeking out things that are more challenging, more complex, more intense, more interesting. But as a starting off point, as a jump off point, I think this is great stuff. And tell you what, even as a whiskey expert, and by expert I mean an absolute amateur with a YouTube channel, I still find this a very easy whiskey to sip and enjoy. In some ways, it's nice bringing it back to basics. You know, a lot of people out there, they like to bash on big brands, but I actually quite like the house style of things like Glenfiddich or Glenlivet. I get a lot out of them. These are distilleries that can make genuinely delicious whiskeys, but problem is they tend to appeal to the casual consumer. Of course, they are at their best when they give us whiskey drinkers something to sink our teeth into. Glenlivet's done a little bit more than Fiddick. They came out with Illicit Still not too long ago. Fantastic whiskey. Try it if you can. I'll link my review up there. They also have some cask strength sherry expressions exclusive to the Taiwan market here that are just amazing. So we do have some offers from Glenlivet. Glenfiddich, still waiting for them to come out with something a little bit juicier for us. In the meantime, I'm happy to sip on this one. My score here is going to be 84. Of course, that score would be higher if we had a proper ABV and some natural presentation, but really this is just designed to be pleasant and easy, and it is. I'm not going to knock pleasant and easy, but I will say it's not the most memorable whiskey. But then again, not every whiskey needs to be memorable. Now you'll notice I never actually called this whiskey boring. It's not a boring whiskey. It is very accessible, but that's a different thing. It's very pleasant, it's very nice. This is a bottle that I actually shared with a friend of mine. My friend is a much more seasoned whiskey drinker than I am, and to its credit, both of us thoroughly enjoyed the bottle. So, tell you what, you might too. So for value, we are looking pretty good here. I think this is probably one of the most affordable branded 18-year-olds on the market. Now, it's not a premium 18-year-old, and it knows it. And honestly, most 18-year-olds out there are going to be a little bit better, more interesting at least than this one, but yeah, they're more expensive. But I do think it's cool that we've got a decent 18-year-old on a budget here. It makes a great gift, it is a good casual sipper, and you do need to temper your expectations a little bit. You're not going to get a Springbank 18 here. There are better 18-year-olds out there if you pay the extra money, but I would say of the affordable Glenfiddichs, this is going to be your best bet. I think it's worth the price bump over the 12 or the 15-year-old any day of the week. Solid stuff. Yeah, worth checking out. Alright, that'll be it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. As always, hit subscribe down below, click that little bell, and of course, smash the like. Now, I do want to hear from you. Have you tried the Glenfiddich 18-year-old? What were your thoughts on it? And finally, down in the comments, let me know what you want to see me review next, and I'll keep it in mind for my upcoming videos. Bye, guys.